Hi, this is my review of the complete Minimalist Descriptive Combat System. This is a fairly short document. This is from the Ken Wickham line of supplements and tools and generators that you can use in solo role-playing games. If you are unfamiliar with those sorts of generators, tools, etc., Ken Wickham pretty much goes into extreme detail concerning many things. If you want to determine the shape of an object, the color, the so many very little details about everything, he has a lot of generators and tables to do that. And in this case, this is a very simple system that works as both a potential replacement for a combat system that you could use in mass battles or in large skirmish battles in tabletop role-playing games. Of course, you could also play it as a sort of mini war game, but it's also very useful to determine the attacks, the sort of maneuvers, techniques that different non-player characters are going to be using against you or in your favor. If you have an ally, a non-player character ally, you could determine the way that that ally fights by using these results. I already printed the entire descriptive combat system. It's very just 3 pages in total, 3 sheets of paper from both sides. You have details concerning melee attacks, martial arts, grappling, and gun or firearm attacks. Well, let's start with the quality of the document. There aren't any illustrations. It's all text. And everything is well written, explained, and organized. I think I spotted two typos, if I remember correctly, but they won't present an obstacle in understanding the content. Okay, so what's this about? This is a combat system that, as I said at the beginning, it could replace your combat mechanics of any role-playing game. You roll to hit. You roll a single six-sided die. All of this works by rolling six-sided dice. So you roll a single six-sided die. If you roll 4, 5, or 6, then the character scores a hit. There could be some modifiers, some circumstantial or armor-related modifiers. If your character is wounded, you also get a penalty. So it's a very simple system. Now you can take this roll to hit method and just discard it, throw it aside, and just focus on the rest of the documents, of the tables rather. Because then you need to roll to find a target location. Maybe the non-player character managed to hit the head of the enemy, or a leg, or an arm, the torso. It's all about that. Then you need to roll for the damage severity. Depending on your system, this could be applied in different ways. So this is a very flexible system. Now, let me give you an example on how this works. Let's say that you decide you don't want to roll to hit. You already have your favorite system. Maybe you are playing a D20 system. So you made your roll and the enemy had armor class 15 and you rolled an 18, so you scored a hit. You roll to see if you hit the enemy on the head, the thorax, the left arm, the right arm, the abdomen, the legs. And there are some areas in the body that are written in bold. They are separated from the rest so that you can tell that those areas are vulnerable. That is, if you attack the enemy, if you hit the enemy on the head, the thorax, the abdomen, it's going to be more damaging when compared to just striking the arm of the enemy or the leg. Maybe you end up crippling that enemy or something like that. But when you hit the head, the thorax, the abdomen, that's very risky for the enemy. Then, depending on your weapon, you make a roll if it's slashing, crushing, or piercing damage. You also have some of these entries in bold. That is, you can also figure out that these locations are very damaging, very harmful or risky for the opponent. So in the case of slashing, if you get the result of cuts off, amputates, cut in two, that is the limb or a body part, then that's quite risky, very damaging for the enemy. If you roll crushing, maybe you obtain crushes or pulverizes, piercing, punctures. So all of those attacks are extra damaging, potentially lethal. When compared to, for example, in slashing, maybe you just nick the surface of the skin. Or in crushing, maybe you slam the opponent and that's it. Or piercing, maybe you just stab the opponent a bit, just a bit into the muscle. Now when it comes to vital damage, if you were attacking a vital area, let's say that you rolled the head of the enemy, and then you obtain the result of crushes, so you crush the head of the enemy, that would be an instant kill. But maybe you attacked the left arm of the opponent, and you obtained the result of impale. So you just impale the arm, very perhaps potentially gross. You maybe you use your spear and you spear the enemy through the arm. So maybe the enemy now gets a penalty to attack. It all depends on the way that you are handling things, on how simple or complex you want to use this subsystem. And so it's very easy to understand, but this also means that, let's say that you are just handling this fight where there are 12 participants in total, a lot of non-player characters there, and a non-player character is attacking another non-player character. Maybe you have an NPC ally against an NPC enemy, and they start to fight. Instead of rolling the dice to see if they hit the armor class, let's roll to see how much damage, erase the or mark the hit points that were dealt as damage, the wounds rather. So instead of taking all of that time, you just roll a d6, taking into account a few simple modifiers. Oh, that enemy scored a hit. Maybe you roll and you determine that the thorax was hit or cut or whatever, or crushed, and you roll the type of damage, and you obtain one of those lethal results. Now the enemy is dead. That's it. Game over for that enemy. So it's a very effective way to run those large combats, in my opinion, and very easy to figure out. The modifiers are very, very self-explanatory, quite simple. If you are using a light weapon, you get a penalty to your roll. If you are wearing light armor, there's also the damage roll must exceed location armor to cause any damage. Now, personally, I would discard these modifiers based on armor. Maybe just factor it into the attack roll, but if you are handling like a simple damage system, you could also do that maybe you roll and you score that too. Well, that's greater damage than light armor, so that definitely results in harm for the opponent. Yeah, scratch that. It's actually that's an effective way of doing it. Definitely consider using the light armor, medium armor, heavy armor modifiers, so that way when you roll damage, maybe you are running like a white box, Dungeons and Dragons, and you roll your six-sided die. You rolled a 5, that's better than heavy armor. Definitely you scored a hit, you potentially kill the enemy. Or maybe you roll below that, it was a glancing blow. There are some things that are not precisely explained. Because, for example, maybe you attacked the left leg of the opponent and you scored damage, but it was not something devastating. It was not cutting off the limb or crushing it or something like that, or pulverizing it. So you could be thinking, how can I take that into consideration when it comes to damage? Maybe the next hit that you score, it results in death, regardless of whether you hit the arm or the leg, etc., because the opponent is already wounded, and perhaps that means that the opponent is fighting less effectively, and now you can strike vital areas more easily. When it comes to minimalist martial arts strikes, it's almost the same thing, but you roll to see what sort of attack got through. Maybe it was a hand strike, perhaps a palm strike or a hook. Maybe it was a leg strike, and it resulted in a front kick or a crescent kick. Maybe it was some sort of other strike like headbutts or shoulder strikes. It's all going to be crushing damage when it comes to, even if you pierce the eye of the opponent with your spear finger or something like that, it is considered crushing damage. And it works the same way. You also have minimalist martial arts grappling. So the same thing, maybe you grappled the head or the left arm or the legs of the opponent. You determine the sort of grappling attack. Maybe it's a takedown, maybe it's a leg sweep. And depending on the result, for example, if you take hold of the opponent, the head or the neck, with a lock, then you need to see if you asphyxiate the opponent. Depending on the hold, the lock, maybe you need to roll muscle, tendon, ligament, joint, and bone damage. So perhaps there is severe muscle strain, or maybe you dislocate the joint. When it comes to asphyxia, maybe the enemy loses consciousness, or maybe the enemy dies. There's also results for throwing attacks, leg sweeps, crushing damage. Everything is counted as crushing damage in grappling as well. They even give you some tips as to how to handle cinematic vital damage. For example, a head target or chokehold. It shows vital areas which rolling a 5 may kill the target soon, or a 6 means instant death. So that's the ambiguous thing that I was telling you about. When they say may kill the target soon, that's up to you to adjudicate. Maybe the next attack will result in death for that enemy. So if you want to have like a big melee or like a street fight with many martial artists at the same time fighting, using all of those grappling techniques and hand strikes and kicks and all of that, these two subsystems are perfect for that, to determine casualties quite quickly. And at the end of the document, you have Minimalist Guns. This is almost the same thing, but because guns are, well, yes, certainly more lethal when used at a certain distance, at the appropriate distance. When it comes to damage, you roll 3 6-sided die, and depending on the gun, for example, if you are using a light gun, you use the lowest value of the damage. If you are using a medium gun, it's the middle value, and so forth. So when it comes to guns, they give you options if you want to butt strike or pistol whip the opponent, which counts as a light melee weapon that is with a penalty. And you make your roll to see the results of the shooting. Maybe you graze the opponent's the skin, the shoulder, or perhaps the head, who knows. Maybe it's actually a hit or a strike, it gets into the muscle, into the fat. But maybe you obtain the blast or blows away result. That's definitely, it either incapacitates the limb or it's lethal because the bullet got into an artery or an organ. So as you can see, all of these subsystems are quite similar, with just a few minor details depending on the sort of weapon that you are using. So overall, what do I think of this complete minimalist descriptive combat system? I think this is great, awesome, when you want to speed up fights and you have several non-player characters participating, especially when it comes to old school role-playing games. Yes, sometimes you have those hirelings fighting against monsters, and you want a quick system to determine the casualties while the enemies are getting into contact with the player characters. Then you handle combat a bit more detailed using the traditional D20 system. I also think that maybe you have a role-playing game and you are quite satisfied with the social subsystems or anything related to bartering or transporting cargo, perhaps even the magic system. So you're satisfied with all of it, but there's something about the combat system that you do not like. You still like the setting of the game, the other subsystems, but you simply cannot tolerate the way combat is handled. You can use these simple subsystems to replace that. And when it comes to solo role-playing games, of course, when you have those non-player characters attacking you or participating as your allies, if you are playing an adventure as a player character with an emulated game master, or the other way around, if you are running an adventure as a game master with emulated player characters. If you want to determine the action of those emulated player characters, the sorts of attacks, definitely use this one. In fact, in my next video featuring From the Ashes, you know, the adventures of Corvus, I'm going to be using these subsystems if Corvus gets into a fight to see what sort of attack he's going to carry out in addition to Abraham's method. Now, for those of you that aren't too much into solo role-playing, please check out the description of this video. I'm going to put a bunch of links there that will provide some tips for solo role-playing. I'm also going to put a link to my solo campaign of From the Ashes. So yes, I would definitely consider getting this small document. They actually sell it as separate documents. You have the melee system and the martial arts strikes tables separately, but if you purchase the complete Minimalist Descriptive Combat System, they also give you the Minimalist Guns tables or results that are not available separately. So yes, in my opinion, you should get the complete Descriptive Combat System. The link will be in the description below. So thank you for watching this review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.